I assume we're ready to go. We will call the Area Plan Commission of Tippecanoe County Executive Committee to order for February 5th, 2025. And first on the agenda is approval of minutes.
For the roll call, correct?
Oh, we could do roll call if you insist.
Vicki Pearl?
I see that now. Thank you.
Jackson Bogan, Larry Leverins, Diana Looper.
Here.
Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Kathy Parker.
Here.
Jerry Reynolds, Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Quorum present.
Okay, now we will take approval of the minutes. Please. Go ahead if you
Jackson, all right, well, I move to approve the minutes from the I move to approve, is that on? Yeah.
It's on.
I move to approve the minutes from the December 4th, 2024 public hearing as submitted.
I second.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. New business. We'll take the primary approval extension.
I move to hear and vote on the primary approval extension request for S2351 Elliott Industrial Park subdivision.
I second.
Okay. Kathy.
Okay, this is Elliott Industrial Park subdivision located at the corner of Brady Lane and Concord Road. Here's a look at the aerial photograph and a closer look. You can see it's pretty much all built out. I think probably the only space still available is this area right here. Oops. Okay, why isn't this working now? There we go. Here's a look at the preliminary plat. It was approved back in 1996, and they are asking for another 2-year extension of that approval. We are recommending approval contingent on all of the original conditions of the primary approval.
Good, thank you. Petitioner or the representative?
Good afternoon, Tim Balancey for T-Bird Design representing Elliott Industrial Park. I agree with all staff's comments, request approval. We hope to final plat here in the next year or so, if I can talk them into it, so we won't be back, hopefully.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tim. Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a yellow ballot.
We have 4 ballots in favor of the extension.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. I'll take the next motion for Resolution 2501.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution PD 2501.
I second.
All right. Well, we've got, let's see if I can get to it here. All right. This residential plan development was rezoned in June of 23, and the construction plans were already approved and recorded. They're kind of coming in now at the final plat stage, doing a single lot. As you can see here, private street network for the apartment buildings. And I believe we have there's the site plan. With the final plat and bonding, the 312 units complex can get underway. So there's not much else to describe about it. It's already, meets all the requirements of the ordinance, so happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, recommending approval of the resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Petitioner or the representative?
Tim Balancey for T-Bird Design, here to represent petitioner. Just request approval and agree with staff's comments. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Any Anyone from the audience wish to comment on this petition? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a yellow ballot. Thank you. Sorry.
We have 4 votes approving the resolution.
Very good, thank you, Ryan. Next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution PD 25-02.
I second.
I don't think Vicki votes.
Yes.
Vicki does not vote if you're counting. She does not vote.
Yes.
She's
She's
not
here
on the
for
exec-
next meeting. Yeah.
She is auditing this class.
Okay.
We're just going to have to put you on it.
All right. All right, staying in Lafayette, this plan development, this is the second part of a kind of 2-part project. You can see the two parts here on the map. We've already been in for Phase 1. The construction plans for the entire project were approved and recorded, and the final plat for Part 1, which is essentially the common area. This one would be between 3rd and 4th Street. That one is done. That cleared them to begin building. Now, they still would need to come in to do an amended plat to actually create the lots around the homes that they're building in. So that would be an administrative approval. That won't come to you. So now Part 2 is coming in. This is between 4th and 5th. And this is the mix of single detached and townhomes, or single attached. There's the site plan. So this final plat approval will create the new common lot area for this part of the project. And then, again, as they break ground and foundations are put in place, then they'd be in a position to do amended plats to create the lots for the homes. So this plan development was pretty flexible. They could have either platted all the lots at once or say, all right, these are going to be small little lots, let's get the foundations in place, and then we'll decide where the lots go. And so they're obviously doing that second option, which is smart. So everything is in place for approval, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you, Ryan. Petitioner, or their representative?
Tim Balancey for Tiber Design here for John Tiebel, Corridor Place. Again, request approval. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone from the audience wish to comment? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a yellow ballot.
Again, 4 votes for resolution approval.
Very good, thank you, Ryan. Next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution PD 25-03.
I second.
All right. Now for something completely different. So this is the next high-rise in West Lafayette. This is the standard at West Lafayette. The proposal located here on Wood Street, right in the center of the block. The Hub Chauncey project was already underway to the north. That building no longer exists. But these do. The apartments are still occupied and will be through the spring semester, which was part of the deal that the developer agreed to with the city. And so that's being honored. But this will obviously clear them to advance to construction once all those tenants are out. And they can begin apply for demo permits with the city. So project's 254-unit apartment complex. 13-story tower. This has final plans, or the construction plans and the final plat. Bonding's already in place, so they'll be good to go to record as soon as tomorrow. So it'll add to the skyline. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, very good, thank you, Ryan. Petitioner or their representative?
Good afternoon, Kevin Riley with RTS Law. Agree with the staff's comments. We've met the requirements of the ordinance. Request your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a yellow ballot.
We have 4 votes for approval.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll take the public hearing motions.
I move to place UZO Amendment Number 116 on the February 19th, 2025 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda.
I second.
All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
I move the following subdivision petitions be placed on the February 19th, 2025 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda at petitioner's request. Placement thereon being without reference to compliance or noncompliance with the adopted subdivision ordinance S 5250 EAB Pause Subdivision Minor Sketch and S 5252 Hadley Flats Major Preliminary.
I second.
All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
I move the following rezone petitions be placed on the February 19th, 2025 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda. Z 2951 Cumberland Development Partners, LLC, Ryan Kennedy, The Cottages at Cumberland, PD, R3W to PDRS. Z 2953 Wida Holdings, LLC, J. Wida, The Approach, PD, R3W to PDRS. Z 2962 Tippecanoe School Corporation, HB and R1 to GB. Z 2963 Domino Group, LLC, GB to GB. And Z 2964 RSK Property Management, LLC, R2 to R1T.
I second.
All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We don't have any February ABZA. We'll take determination of variances.
I move the following request for variance from the Unified Zoning Ordinance is not a request for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute, number 2025-05, Staley Credit Union.
I second it.
All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. January budget report.
I move we approve the January 2025 budget report as submitted.
I second.
Ryan.
Happy to answer any questions. The year's just starting, so not much is going on right now.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Ryan on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Any other business? I'll take that last motion.
I move we adjourn.
We're adjourned.
That was an efficient meeting.
Wasn't it good? You know why?
Where were you?
You know why?
Where was he?
He just
How
walked
did he
in.
sneak in? Oh.
I didn't see him.
I know.
I tried to give him the paper and he wouldn't take it.
Gosh.
You're stealthy.
No, we had a BZA meeting right before this.
Oh, that's right. You did say that.
Well, that was quick.
Yeah?
Where do you have that? City Hall? Yeah. Jogging?
No, I didn't. And it's,
I know.
Yes, it is.
anybody was wondering.
I
We
don't
have a nice
know.
skating rink.
Yeah.
Is that your spot?
And then 50
Do you just
tomorrow.
like your spot?
So, there you go.
I'll tell you.
Taking time to make the agenda, I did not.
I don't think you made it.
They didn't make it. I apologize. I didn't do it.
How do you think Commissioner Murphy feels right now? How's Hawaii?
Are we ready to go with the next meeting? Everybody ready? So, I will call the Area Plan Commission of Tippecanoe County Ordinance Committee and Bylaw Committee to order for February 5th, 2025. Do we have a roll call here?
We do not.
Okay.
Traditionally, I think the secretary will reflect who's here. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take approval of the minutes. A motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
A second.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Terminating special exceptions. Amanda.
Thank you. Just to refresh, we last visited this topic at the November 6th Ordinance Committee meeting when some members of the ABZA were present. We were discussing the process of terminating a special exception, which is allowed in the UZO Chapter 644J, which allows an application to terminate a special exception by an interested person, a staff member, or an administrative officer. As a result of that discussion that we had in November, it was determined that an ordinance change should be made to remove the possibility of just a random person, for lack of a better term, to file that application and leave it just in the hands of the administrative officer. The county has 3 administrative officers, one for West Lafayette, one for Lafayette, one for the county. All of them are aware of this change and are in support, so the ordinance change would merely remove those 2 options and leave it with just the administrative officer. So we're opening this up for discussion if you want. We're certainly happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, recommend that this gets passed on to APC for approval.
And how often does this happen?
This has not happened as far as we're aware, but because it's in the ordinance, as it currently stands, like I said, any interested person could come in and ask to file an application to terminate.
Okay.
So I have a question. So if I live in the county, I just come into the office and then you decide which administrative officer would handle it, or what's the process?
Well, ideally, the process would have gone through a zoning complaint enforcement process first. A complaint should be lodged with the administrative officer. So if you're within city limits of West Lafayette, it would be Chad Spitznagel as the AO. Lafayette is Jeremy Grenard. If it's outside of those city limits, then it's our building commissioner. But our office actually handles the zoning violations for the county. So we would take a look at it, that AO would take a look at the special exception and determine if they are in violation of what was approved. There is a process for zoning violations as set forth in the ordinance. I think a termination would be another tool that could be used in addition to that zoning violation process, which results, if it remains, a violation could result in a lien being placed on the property, followed by litigation if the lien is not paid, and so forth and so on.
I guess when I read this, I wasn't thinking a zoning violation. I was thinking of something that was initially, maybe I just totally misunderstood. I thought it was something that was already on the property and that had changed, and they were asking to change it accordingly, not necessarily that they were in violation of something.
A special exception is something that the BZA has approved.
Like a setback?
No, that would be a variance.
Okay.
A special exception would be, for example, Airbnb is done through special exception, or had been done through special exceptions in R1 zones. It's an approval process through the BZA where they review their entire business proposal, operating hours, how many people are coming onto the site, traffic, and all that. Yeah, for very specific uses. And whatever is approved at that meeting, that's the only thing that you can do on site. If you expand it or seek to expand it in any way, or do something that was not part of your approval, that approval is essentially part of the zoning ordinance because it was an approved special exception. So in that sense, it could be considered a zoning violation. This would terminate that approval, saying that you no longer have the right to conduct that use on this property if the BZA agrees to terminate that special exception through this process that we're talking about.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And no matter, so if that is, if it's something that has to go to the BZA, I guess any violation would go down this path, right? It's not like the AO can decide which does and doesn't. Maybe I'm not asking it.
Violations don't necessarily happen it may not be a special exception
Right. I mean in this
approval.
scenario.
Right, in this scenario, yeah. I I believe it would be up to the AO, I think, if they wanted to go this route. They certainly have other options granted to them by the ordinance. Like I said, they can place a lien on the property if the violation remains after a certain amount of time. Litigation can be pursued. This would just be another option to take away the right to do that use.
Let me give you an example of what I see, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it could be a special exception. It just could be just a zoning violation. Typically, the AO, somebody would file a complaint on the zoning violation. Administrative officer would look at it and decide whether they're in compliance or not, give them an opportunity to correct the violation. Sometimes they don't understand what they really need to do. Hopefully, most of the time, those are corrected. If they aren't corrected or refuse to, then they would be found in violation and you could issue fines against them. And then typically what happened if that petitioner disagreed, they would appeal that, and that would bring it to the BZA, and then we would hear the case, and at that time either find that they are in violation or not. They may come in and ask for a variance to become in compliant. We may hear those cases, but then in the end, they could lose their special exception or their variance if they've varied from that. And I think we've only heard one case. I'd like to hear Steve talk here, but I think we've only heard one case, and that was the dog kennel south of town, and we've heard that and kind of resolved that issue. But it's a process, kind of goes along with other laws where you have someone independent of the case make a decision whether they're in violation or not, and then work through the process. Correct me where I'm misspoke.
I was just going to say that another pathway, if someone has exceeded the terms of their special exception, they can always come back to the BZA with a new petition to amend the special exception to bring it into compliance, whatever the issue might be. And it's worth noting historically, I asked Steve because he's got a good memory for this. In his memory, the BZA has never terminated a special exception. It's never gotten to that level. But it is another tool available to essentially a property owner that is not cooperating. You know, they're in violation, and it's sort of a last measure. But the thing is that even if they terminated the special exception, the property owner could persist with the violation, which means they're still in a zoning violation environment, which leads, as you say, to fines, property liens, and eventually the courtroom. Mm-hmm. So, this is kind of another tool in the box.
Yeah.
So,
I like the idea of bringing it back to the administrative officer. It's kind of an independent person. Allow people to become into compliance.
Sure.
So,
You said you wanted to hear from Steve.
well, if he has anything to say, usually he'll enlighten us, and since he is our president on the BZA.
Steve Clevenger, 4011 Black Forest Lane, President of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Before, there was never a process for this. It was always in the ordinance that this could happen. The BZA has the right to terminate a special exception. So we're trying to define a process for that. And in the process, at the last meeting, we decided instead of just modifying our bylaws, that we need to look at this section, Chapter 644J in the zoning ordinance, and we decided that it really should be part of the process of a zoning violation rather than just an interested person or a staff member raising the idea that we should terminate the special exception without going through any other due process before that. But so this just it really limits it to the administrative officer and gets rid of the interested person or staff member, and then we're going to define a process in our bylaws for how to handle this. So that's really, this has never happened to the knowledge, as long as I've been following the BCA and APC, this has never happened. I don't know what was in the old zoning ordinance, but since NUZO was passed, this has never occurred. And I know there are a couple of zoning violations out there that have caused some issues and concerns that could possibly have triggered this by an interested person, or it could come, it would have to now come before the administrative officer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I am in support of this motion.
Very good, thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Any other questions from commission?
What are you wanting from us?
Any, if you don't understand, disagree, otherwise we'll move it forward. Let me get some public input, more public. Anybody else from the audience wish to comment, especially any administrative officers that happen to be in the audience? Thumbs up is fine. Okay, that's all we need. That's all we need. Okay.
I'll make a motion to move it forward to the full APC
With a positive
with
recommendation.
a positive recommendation.
We'll take. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions to move this forward? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Very good, thank you. Gas stations and truck stops.
Okay, so currently, our zoning ordinance has a definition for a gas station and a truck stop. But lately, we've been seeing something that's sort of in between the two. Not quite a truck stop, but it's a little more than a gas station. So we've come up with a new definition to meet that void, I guess you could call it. So here's the definition for a gas service station. It uses the word primarily, as in it primarily serves automobiles and other passenger vehicles selling fuel. The definition of truck stop is primarily for use in trucks and other commercial vehicles. So what we're seeing more and more is a gas station that has semi-truck lanes for diesel fuel. And because we don't really have a good place to put it, we've been calling them truck stops, even though they're really not a truck stop. So it's a little heavy-handed going that route. So here's the new proposed definition. We're calling it a fueling center. I hope you like that. And it's any retail facility that dispenses fuel to the general public that includes lanes primarily for automobiles and other passenger vehicles, but also separate lanes for semi-truck fueling. A fueling center shall have no more than 4 lanes for semi-truck fueling and up to 4 spaces for semi-truck parking. It can be no larger than 4 acres in area. It's not a truck stop, so there's no overnight parking allowed. And what else? If it's more than 4 acres or has more than 4 semi-truck fueling lanes, it's a truck stop, basically.
If it has no fueling for semi-trucks, then it is a
Gas station. So here's a good example in Battleground on State Road 43, just north of 65. This isn't highlighted, but anyway, this is a gas station. It's about 1 acre in size. There's no fueling for semis on that property. This one is 2.88 acres in size. It meets our definition of fueling center. It's got 4 lanes in back for semi-trucks. It's got gas in front, of course. And then this one over here, this is where Quick Stop is planning on building a truck stop. Although it's been about 4 years since they got their variances and they're still not there. But anyway, it's almost 8 acres in size. And here, I'll show you. This is their site plan. You can see it's got like 9 lanes for semis to fuel, and it's got more than 4 parking spaces for semis. So we're going to call this a truck stop. Okay. So far, so good. Does that make sense? Okay. So the proposed amendment would solve these UCO-generated problems. And this relates to the last page of the packet, if you've got that handy. So Section 1, it just fixes a formatting issue that's a little confusing, no biggie. Section 2 would allow gas stations by right only in the GB and HB zones and allow them by special exception in NB.
Kathy, I don't see ordinance on here. Thank you. Does everybody else? I see the February exec packet.
It's not on there, I didn't find it.
It's, if you go to the website.
Yeah, you just gotta
Oh,
switch
just go to the website, okay.
Okay.
It's loaded.
How did you switch to ordinance?
She just found it.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
You might get Jackson also. You're just too old, you're probably too old.
I agree with that. I agree. Yeah.
So I think we can agree that we've seen a proliferation lately of gas stations, especially in Lafayette and in the county. So Section 2 would limit where gas stations could be located only in GB and HB by right and by special exception in NB.
So is that a change or is that current?
Yeah, that would take it out of the central business district and NBU.
So my question is, how many are we affecting?
2. There's a gas station at Romig and 4th Street that is zoned CB, I believe. And the one at 9th and Ferry is zoned NBU. I would argue both of those really should be zoned NB anyway. But they are, if this becomes law, they would be legally grandfathered, so.
But if they burn,
They could rezone to NB and,
which costs them to change the zoning.
yes. Section 3 would eliminate the footnote that requires a 1,000-foot separation. We're going to eliminate it from the permitted use table because that's something that can't be varied. You can't get a variance for it. So we're eliminating it here, but we're going to add it into Chapter 4. So that comes later. Section 4 would create a definition for a fueling center. That's what we just talked about. Section 5 would add fueling center to the permitted use table and allow them by right in both GB and HB. And Section 6 would add a new section to the zoning ordinance. It would have additional requirements for both fueling centers and truck stops, including required separations from residences and buffering standards. So the separation in for a truck stop is still 1,000 feet, but it would be both HB and I3 zones. Currently, that separation is only in the HB zone, and since you can't get a variance for it, you have to rezone to I3 if you're next to a house, which really we don't want to encourage that. So this would allow them to get a variance and apply for HB zoning instead of I3 for a truck stop. And then the BZA can decide if 1,000 feet is necessary or something less.
What do fueling centers currently fall under? Just regular gas station?
Well, that's the issue. Because gas stations really don't talk about semi-trucks, we've been putting it under truck stop, which it's really not a truck stop, but
So it's been more restrictive, this actually loosens it up.
yeah.
So the one that we approved, the rezone here, it's off of 25.
Pardon, Beach Road. That's
Yeah, that's a perfect example. That went I-3, even though there are houses across the street, it would have been better in HB. And then,
Good to learn that going forward. We're not hurting their project, which we've already approved and put in motion.
Right.
Process, right?
truck stops are still permitted in I-3, that's not changing.
But was that a true truck stop or just?
Oh, it's a truck stop, it's like,
Yeah,
11 acres,
I didn't remember the semi-lanes there.
yeah.
So how about the case we just approved or recommended approval on the west side? Was that Klondike and 52?
I don't think
That was
that's
a
got
gas
semi-truck
station.
lanes.
That's just a gas
No, that
station.
was just a passenger fueling
And
station.
nothing's changing for passenger gas fueling station?
No.
Because I think there were some residents around that.
There are, but that's Zone GB, and there are no separation requirements for gas
So it
stations.
won't affect that case.
Right.
So to your knowledge, we don't have anything underway that this creates a problem.
Well, we have a rezone coming up in Romney, and actually, I think this kind of prompted that,
That's what sparked this conversation.
yeah. Yeah, it's a way to protect the homeowners in Romney. There are houses pretty close to that property. At the same time, acknowledging it's not a truck stop, it's something smaller.
Because the Romney was pursuing the I-3, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
they
we
were-
really-
They were looking for I-3 in the middle of Romney.
Yeah, and we
Right,
don't want
which-
I-3.
Is overkill.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this will allow them to do HB.
Yeah, particularly because HB zoning is actually tied to like a half a dozen named highways. You can only have HB zoning if you have frontage along one of these highways. 231 is one of them, so in Romney, they would qualify for HB, which would be much more appropriate than I-3.
My only concern are the two that, I appreciate what we're doing here, but the two that are, they're doing nothing wrong, we're making the change, and then if something happens, they're going to have to go through a whole process to get back what they had. And it concerns me.
Is there a resolution for that? Like, do we notify them that they've become non-conforming? Do we waive fees if they came in and wanted to rezone to become conforming? Sometimes that affects financing, insurance issues as both groups get more sophisticated. And they look at their risk.
Yeah.
I mean, if they go to sell and this goes through, then even if nothing else changed, they would have to go through the process to get it changed.
Mhm.
And I guess
Yeah, I think it's worth it, personally, just speaking for myself, because I don't want any more gas stations to come into CB, our central business district. The ones that there is fine.
I'm just talking about the two that are, this is affecting them.
I know.
I hope it's only two. It makes me nervous. We always say this, and then there's some outlier we didn't know about. And
They're the only two I can think of in the downtown area.
Yeah, the other ones are
Correct
gone,
me if I'm
or
wrong.
the Speedway in West Lafayette is a planned development on State Street there, so, which that's always a zoning pathway that a project could take. We discussed a similar thing with central business zoning and drive-throughs, with the Economic Development Director of Lafayette about, we really don't want to see drive-throughs in a downtown environment, but if we did a planned development, we could maybe control what it looks like and maybe get it to fit in. So there could still be a pathway for a new gas station in a downtown environment, through the PD process.
So I think what you're concerned about, Vicki, is Section 2, which could be eliminated if you want to go that way.
I'm just trying to find a solution based on those that are already not new. I'm talking about, right.
So, question for council, do we have the right authority to ask that they be notified and ask that we waive the filing fees?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, you have a grandfathering, and what we're really talking about is the possibility of having a super grandfathering, which essentially says, you've already built, you're already up and running, we've made a change, and in the event you burn down, which is really the only,
Or sell.
or, well, sell is.
Or want to add on.
Sales are.
Or make a change.
No,
You can't
yeah.
draw, you can't, I don't think you can pull a building permit.
Well, it depends on the change. But my only point is, I don't know whether there's a workaround. I think there could be, I just haven't ever given it any thought. Because what you're talking about, it's come up before, it just never really occurred to me that there could be a zoning ordinance workaround that talks about the fact that, this is not going to apply to grandfathered properties, even if those properties burn down or somehow have a
My
change.
only concern with that, I typically agree with Vicki on this, but my only concern is then for everyone going forward, are we setting precedent for doing that again? If we make a change and it makes somebody non-conforming.
I think that's exactly the problem. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
with
exactly
a
the problem.
Zone, an overlay, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, we're opening a can that,
Well, it depends on the process. I mean, how would you make that determination? You can flat out say it always applies. You can never have your use eliminated because of a burn, being burned down. I'm not sure that's good policy.
It's like when we redo a whole neighborhood for, correct term escapes me, aren't they notified? Would have a chance to come in
Yeah,
and ask for something out of the gate?
yeah, that's true.
So that's the other way to do it, is you're just giving them the opportunity to be heard on it.
Well, that's true.
And
We
that's what
could,
you were suggesting.
I like that.
Sorry,
I mean, we're talking about 2 properties. We could definitely send a
But
letter.
that's the other thing, is it only 2?
Well, I
don't
mean,
know, I'm asking the question because I feel like we're not, we're saying we think it's 2, but I know in another instance, we thought it was only a couple and it ended up being more, so it makes me very nervous.
we can check it out. We can,
So what was the other one besides NBU that's being eliminated?
NBU and CB, the Central Business District.
Okay. And that's essentially the downtown core.
Yeah.
And for the folks that have been on the commission for a long time, we've seen lots of folks that have come in over many years to make a property conforming, and they submit a rezone petition. It's a $500 fee. It's not an unreasonable thing, and it's certainly, we have a long history of people coming in. I have a historic duplex, and it's zoned R1 from eons ago, and I'm just coming in to get this fixed, and they do it. It's not uncommon at all. I think the main reason to create the grandfathering is, it's certainly not to punish those folks, it's to keep them from proliferating. We don't want to see more of these things pop up, So I would contend that a $500 rezoning fee is not an unreasonable thing, particularly for a business use, which may have a little bit more resources than a homeowner in a historic house, for example. So that's just my opinion.
One other thing I wanted to mention, we are expecting a resolution from Lafayette City Council regarding gas stations, and that resolution is primarily regarding the proliferation of gas stations, not the fueling center that we're talking about here. So depending on what that resolution says, we might be revisiting this topic.
When's that expected?
We don't know.
Not sure which agenda it's.
We'll see Dave Griffey tomorrow at AO's, so we'll ask him.
But I think they might be envisioning a special exception only track, perhaps in certain zones in the city, so that there's greater scrutiny, over fueling centers as a broad use.
So, go ahead, Jackson.
no, so I like it overall. I feel like Vicki's making a great point that if we can give a couple people notice to at least know. I'm not saying it's going to change my vote at all. In fact, I don't think it will, because I do think it's better for the community overall. That being said, I feel like we owe it to them to let them know that this is going to happen.
Okay.
I'd also like to request, if we could, a scrubbing of the books, if you will, to make sure that it is 2.
Yes.
And you all are better at that than
We can do
anybody here.
that.
So if you could look at that, and if it's 3, it's 3, but let's get them notified and then maybe bring it back. I don't know.
Can it be tabled till next time?
Or does it need to go through?
Well,
That might be a question for
Yeah.
Kevin, because it's his client. I don't know what your client's intentions are.
we do have a case on the agenda.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not just 3 properties. First of all, there is a Circle K on Veterans Memorial that's currently zone GB and has a diesel lane that's within 300 feet of a residential zone. So if this is passed the way it is, it impacts that. So just looking at CB, it's not accurate. It impacts more than just 2 properties. Yeah, this was kind of born out of the various Circle K. We filed 3 petitions here in the past few months. One was on 500 South, one is in Romney, one was in West Lafayette. This doesn't impact the West Lafayette station. It would have impacted the 500 South station. It definitely impacts Romney. I don't have an issue so much with a new classification. What I have an issue with is attaching a setback standard of 500 feet to this new classification, which essentially, in essence, treats it still like a truck stop. We were told repeatedly that your use is a truck stop, your use is a truck stop. And they just acknowledge it's not a truck stop. And I understand there was a hole in the ordinance, but it's frustrating to continue to be treated like a truck stop. And then on, the Romney development in particular, these houses are along 231, a highway. There's noise, there's traffic, there's light associated with a highway. But in order to develop a fueling center at the Romney location, we now have to be set back 500 feet from all of those homes within Romney, even though those homes are directly on US 231. So they are still going to experience the same things that this ordinance appears to be directed at protecting against. So again, I don't have a problem with the new designation or the fueling center. I don't have a problem with them being in GB or HB. What I have a problem with is an arbitrary setback.
That can be varied. That's what we're moving to.
It
So
can be
there
varied,
there
but
is a relief valve.
But every time we file a variance, you guys recommend denial. And then we go to the BZA with a denial from staff, and you know as well as I do, the chances of success on something like this, it's a coin flip at best.
I would look at the scorecard and see what the BZA normally votes.
But you typically.
They vote normally with
but
a
you
mob
typically
that shows
recommend
up
against.
for or against. So, you made your point, I made mine.
So, your example of Romney, is it a truck center? Or
It is not a truck stop, no. We were told it was a truck stop.
Because that was the only option.
Well, no, it wasn't the only option. Gas station was an option. Because, well, that's your opinion, that is not my opinion. No, the ordinance says nothing about high-speed diesel. It says primarily. And the Circle K, we talked to you about this, their business is not primarily diesel. So I disagree. I don't think, again, I'm okay with the new classification to try to resolve that issue. But so I guess, Jackson, to answer your question, no, it's not a truck stop. There would be high-speed diesel lanes. I think it was 2 on the preliminary site plan.
So it would fall under a fueling center.
It would now fall under a fueling center, right. And my concern is, it essentially, then we've got a 500-foot setback that we're going to have to, seek a variance for if this is passed.
And you were requesting I-3, which is what setback?
I don't recall, we requested I-3 because we had no other choice.
Right.
Because we were told it was a truck stop, so we had to file for I-3 because we knew if we got GB, then,
Right.
and then we go to pull permits, we're going to be told, no, this is a truck stop, you can't build this here.
What's the setback on I-3?
Are you asking the number of feet from the closest residence?
Yes. I'm sorry, that's what I was asking. Thank
On
you.
I-3, the setback from residences is how many feet?
The setback was about 1,000 feet, wasn't it?
Right.
That's the foot
Separation.
in the
For truck
footnote for a truck stop.
This would be 50. Or 500.
So this one for a fueling station would be 500.
But I think if I understand Jackson's question, is there, if somebody's requesting I-3 zone, is there a requirement for a separation from the closest residence?
No, not just for a rezone.
Just for
It
a
would just be a
buffer
buffer yard, yeah.
So
And
these are the only, are these the only, this classification, truck stop, fueling centers, and, or I'm sorry, whatever our three definitions out, these three, service stations, fueling stations, and truck stops, are they the only classifications that require a separation between the closest residents? That's
We added a separation to ag rental halls in the last year. I can't think of any other uses offhand that we have a separation for. I mean, adult entertainment centers, things like that.
So then, and in Kevin's example in Romney, I mean, there's a gas station, fueling station directly across the street from where this one's being proposed that is even closer to residences. So are we, so in Vicky's case, example, we're,
The only difference is the high-speed diesel lane.
I'm wondering if, just a thought, tell me what's wrong with it, but leave the setbacks out and not go to BZA and just raise those issues at the zoning process? So you kind of have one hearing, and you're looking at those setbacks. That's a reason not to approve, because it's kind of a two-step process for the petitioner. I mean, they come in, they get their zoning, they may not get their setback variance. It allows them to pursue a location, argue the setback, listen to the neighbors at one hearing, and approve that. You can go forward or you can't go forward.
And my thought is.
Does that make sense?
So we have protections in the ordinance. We have buffer yards. We have the setback, internal setbacks. We also have commitments. And it is not at all uncommon for me to go and talk to the city or the county before we file a rezone and say, you know, are there commitments that you want to see with this? And that's what I would envision here. I mean, if we file something and we find out that there are a lot of issues for whatever reason, one solution is potentially to use commitments, which we have done multiple times.
So how is a commitment going to solve this problem of being too close to 3 houses in Romney?
They live, in my opinion, they live on a highway. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there's one
those same problems that you're talking about exist. There's traffic, there's noise, there's light. I don't.
There's one on 231 and 2 on State Road 28 that's pretty far back from the highway.
What is a house?
Yeah.
But there are also houses that are right on the highway. Well, what is? I mean, I guess I would ask you, how did you come up with 500 feet?
Not just the business owner need to come into play in this decision.
I
What's
understand.
most expedient for the gas station, but also there's ramifications for neighbors potentially that needs.
I understand that. I'm here because I think that this is.
Right, we're trying to stick up for the homeowners.
I got you. I think that's a good plan, and I'm wondering if you leave that with the zoning process, then you have the jurisdiction making the decision, not the BZA.
That's.
Right,
Yes,
opposed
that
to
would be
getting
acceptable.
that, make your case that if they don't like it, then it's up to the jurisdiction to listen to those remonstrators opposed to the BZA.
Because if we go to rezone
Right.
and area
If you
plan
don't
doesn't
get it-
believe it's appropriate
Well, we
there,
may send it forward, whatever, recommendation, no recommendation, but it's up to the final decision maker. If they think that it's
Yeah, I like
bad,
that.
then they can turn it down, opposed to adding more process steps
yeah.
and more kind of unknowns.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're happy with the BZA, sometimes you're not.
I just think, again, it's an extra step, and it's a step that truly, I mean, you know, we know what's going to happen at the staff level, and then it's.
Well,
So if this moves forward tonight, do you happen to know, does your client intend to change from I3 to HB?
Yes, we aren't going to continue with I3.
Okay.
If part of the reason that we continued Romney was to see what happened here, to see if we needed to change our rezone petition.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't want to file I3 out there.
Okay. Good. So I personally would like to see this move forward tonight so that can happen.
Can we take out the setbacks and the whatever else? I mean, and we still have to notify figure out what's your thought about the people that is affecting? Maybe some of those are your clients, maybe they're not, that we're making them non-conforming.
I would want to know. If I were them, I would want to know that was going to be a possibility, and I understand it doesn't cost a lot to file the rezone application, but what it does do, it causes potential problems with lenders. I mean, now you've got a non-conforming use, you go to refinance, and they ask for zoning verification, and then they figure out that you're not correctly zoned.
I just think it's better to zone it now that it's fresh, and what we see is sometimes people come back 3 or 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And things have changed, and it's maybe harder to get that zoning.
Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate you listening.
Okay?
Every filling station has these.
Would you turn your mic on there?
Every filling station has diesel. They sell diesel. There's diesel trucks that are not semis. What's the difference?
I think they're the lanes designated for, and they're the long lanes for semi-trucks, not for like your, what's a good, Yukon that's a diesel. I think that's the distinct difference.
Okay.
The gas station can sell, or whatever the term is, it can sell diesel.
I guess we should ask.
It just can't have the long semi lanes.
Right, like a lot of U-Haul trucks they take diesel and they can go to a gasoline service station.
Talking about the big canopies, long lanes, parking areas for
Right, just
53-footers.
like what Jackson said, yeah.
Not every gas station has those.
So I would feel better if we take out the setbacks. I mean, we raise the issue, there's still a opportunity I'd rather those be heard at the legislative level than the BZA. I mean, let them make the decision on that.
So I'm going to make a motion that we send this forward for recommendation of approval to the full APC staff with the setbacks for truck stops and fueling centers removed.
Clarification, setbacks to,
Not setbacks, separation from the nearest residence removed.
So you're doing away with that for both fueling center and truck stops?
Well, but truck stops they're going to be in what? What zone? The HB and,
HB and I3.
yeah, so they're not going to,
HB requires 1,000-foot separation. If I've got a house next door, oops, I got to rezone to I3. That's the way it is now.
Which isn't what Kevin's saying was not going to work. Correct? To go HB because you'd still have the $1,000-foot setback.
Right, yes, if we either had, yes, with the HB, the way it's drafted there, we would have a 500-foot setback, not 1,000.
correct.
Right.
Okay, so again, truck stops could be in HB or I3 or GB. No, it can't be in GB.
No.
Okay, that's right, okay. So, okay, so I think I'd like to amend that to only removing the residential use setback or the separation from residential use from the fueling centers.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
So basically, removing the residential separation, the 500 feet from the fueling centers.
Okay, leaving it on truck stops on both HB and I-3?
I'm eager for some feedback on that.
So wait, it sits currently, correct?
No, currently the 1,000-foot separation is only on the HB.
And not on the I-3.
Then I'd recommend leaving that the same, removing the 500 on, I'm getting a little confused myself, but removing the 500 on the, is that HB?
No, on the fueling centers.
On the fueling centers, yes, thank you.
In other words, not adding any more separation standards other than what's already in force, is what we're saying. Not adding more. Leave it the way it is.
Okay, if we leave it in HB in the permitted use table, we're going to force truck stops to rezone to I-3 if they are
Yeah.
within 1,000 feet of a house.
Okay, I
Yeah.
said remove, not add anymore. Just remove. I'm in agreement with removal.
Yeah, I guess I'm not understanding. Remove the 500-foot separation for fueling centers, I got that. And then what are we doing for truck stops?
What do we currently have?
1,000-foot separation in HB, nothing in I-3.
Leave it like that.
But what that does, what Kathy's saying is that's how we got to this original problem,
Yes.
is because
HB has 1,000-foot.
Yeah, and if you've got houses around you, I can't rezone to HB, I have to rezone to I-3. And then you've got,
The use should have the setback, not the zone.
yeah,
So there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both zones are doing the same thing for that specific use.
we don't want another Barton Beach Road case where we've got I-3 zoning, truck stop right next to houses.
Where HB zoning is, allowed next to I-65.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What do you mean by you don't want another case? I don't understand that.
Yeah, of I-3 zoning,
I mean, you don't want to have to
shoehorned in
make
next
that.
to residential.
You don't want to make that I-3. You want to give them another solution.
Yeah.
They could still put their gas station
Yeah,
there.
that case should have
under a
been
fueling
HB.
center. I
Yeah.
got you.
Right,
I didn't understand what you're saying.
yeah. And they would have done HB, most likely, 'cause they just wanted to build a truck stop. They didn't want to build a factory, or a landfill, so.
And if we allow the Board of Zoning Appeals to hear a variance on that 1,000-foot separation, then the board can go, oh, okay, so maybe 800 feet, that would work. Yeah, we can support 800 feet, but 1,000 feet, each case is different.
Right, there may be residents that could care less. I mean, it's the same thing.
But wouldn't
for all variance cases.
couldn't that all be done through the rezone process, like Gary mentioned?
No, you can't. You can't reduce the setback.
Setback.
Well, I know, but I mean, the legislative body could decide whether it's appropriate to rezone the property because it doesn't have appropriate setbacks. There isn't enough separation.
Yeah, and it might compromise the property later. I mean, if you do a commitment on a setback for that use, well, that property may develop again under that same zoning district and then be encumbered by this setback that may not make any sense anymore, So,
Any thoughts, Kevin?
I think the BZA provides an opportunity for the neighbors, the people, the little guy, to come out and speak and have a chance to say, hey, now that I see the site plan and the situation, I don't have a problem with this, or, yeah, this is going to impact me in some way.
I see the rezone may not have the site plan, and so,
It will not.
It will
yeah.
not.
It's non-binding even if they do.
okay.
Yeah. So we want to try to give some surety to the homeowners, ostensibly. That's our position.
Yes, in terms of, I think you maybe asked for my comment on the commitment. If there's a commitment for a property that doesn't make sense, what you would do is you would come in and file a rezone to try to eliminate the commitment, if that is what is.
No,
what
I'm
your
just talking
question
about
was.
in general, what we're trying to do.
procedurally another relief valve is you rezone again with a new commitment.
Yeah. Procedurally, again, I think, I'm not weighing in on the truck stop. My concern was the fueling center, and I think there are other protections within the ordinance, and I don't think that the setback is necessary on the fueling center.
Okay.
That's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think that's what we were saying. Is there a setback on gas stations? Okay.
So, based on what he said, is this going to make the other Romney station non-compliant? If this is passed? Not the new one, the one across the street.
No, it's a gas station.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's zone GB.
Yeah, I don't think it impacts that.
Okay.
I see Chad's moving towards the microphone, so let's hear from his way up.
Just a random thought to your point. If a storage center comes in and gets burned up, the use is gone. If a gas station comes in, we still have fuel tanks. To me, the use isn't gone yet. I would think you could still make an argument in the CB zone that the use isn't gone. So unless the tanks blow up out of the ground, the use for that lot isn't completely gone either. So I know there's some build back requirements for the 50%, but
That's what it is.
I mean, your fuel tanks are probably 50%, even though it's not a
Probably
structure.
correct to
Yeah,
replace
just a
that.
thought.
Good point.
Another point with grandfathering that needs to, yeah, I'm on, thanks, is that, if the use ceases for 1 year and there is no intent to continue the use, then you lose your grandfathering. If you have a for sale sign out there and it says gas station property for sale, but it takes 5 years to get the sale done, you still have your grandfathering because there was an intent to continue the use. It's just the market wasn't responding. So
That is correct, but
Financing.
most finance places would say it's in a non-conforming zone, so if something transpires, you can't necessarily build it back.
Well, then that owner should pursue a zoning remedy to, make it conforming if that's the issue. And there are remedies for that.
Okay. Does everybody understand my motion?
You want to restate it?
Yeah, I think I better. Okay. My motion is that we move this forward with a recommendation for approval to the full APC with one change, and that will be removing the language regarding separation from the nearest residential use from fueling centers.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
A second.
Okay. Discussion on that? We all understand?
So there will be no separation? I mean,
There won't be a requirement here.
Like a gas station?
Yeah, it'd be the same as a gas station.
okay.
So,
What is that, and what is that requirement with the
Separation
gas
of buffer
station?
yard.
Good point.
Oh, a buffer yard, did you say?
Yeah, I think we're all getting confused with separation from
Internally.
humans
Absolutely.
and buffer yard.
Okay,
There are still buffer yards in place.
okay. Thank you.
and like Gary mentioned, at the legislative,
You can hear those.
you could hear your neighbors' complaints and saying, this isn't appropriate because
Okay.
there's not enough.
Because it kind of says to the BZA, if you've approved the zoning and they need a little more space, I don't know, could you even pursue a rezoning if you're in violation of the separation? Do you have to?
Well, it depends on the status of the property. If it's a completely undeveloped property and you pursue a rezone, sure, there's no guarantee that what they're wanting to do on that property is going to be a fueling center.
Okay, they could still rezone and then request their.
And then
I got you.
request, if what they are wanting to build is a fueling center and they don't meet that separation, then they would have to pursue a variance at that point.
Okay. Anyway, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other questions or discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Does that motion
4-1.
carry? 4-1, that motion does carry. Thank you.
Correct.
Now, is there I think we did talk about, I don't know if we need to make that official, I think Vicki may want to make something, that we try to go back and look, we've identified maybe some potential others, notify those owners of the potential change and allow them to make a comment, because it'll be heard at the full commission. Is it going to be on February's agenda or what?
Yes.
So you did get it advertised?
Yes,
Okay.
it is on the agenda for
Okay.
APC.
So I got a couple weeks. They can either send a letter or whatever. Okay, notify them. Any other comments on gas stations, truck stops? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to citizens' comments and grievances. Bagel says that we would like to say something. Okay.
Evening, Tim Balancey again. I'm with the Developers Committee at Bagel right now, so I'm put on my Bagel hat right now.
Okay.
We have had some preliminary meetings with Ryan about doing some smaller lots, and would like the committee to maybe ask the staff to sit down and kind of do a roundtable with developers about kind of coming up with a plan for a smaller than R1B. We had kind of presented an R1, modifying the R1U, which is very similar to what we're talking about. I think there's maybe a little bit of pushback to not change R1U and maybe create an R1C. But I think it's still preliminary. It does the same job, but it's, we're just kind of asking to have staff take a look into it and then present something back to the ordinance committee at some point in time in the future. Hopefully it's a quick one, but who knows?
Tim, there are a few slides on the presentation if you wanted to advance.
Oh, I didn't know you had them all. Yeah.
Just click, use, click left button.
Okay. Wrong way? Okay. Sorry. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, so let's see if I can get this thing to roll back again.
What, 40-foot wide lots? Is that what you want?
It's a 40-foot wide lot is what we're talking about, which is what an R1U would be. And the depth would be 100 feet, so it'd be about a 4,000 square foot lot is what we'd be talking about. But this would be, this particular plan that you see here would still allow some 5 or 6 foot setbacks. I'm not sure we've determined exactly what the side yard setbacks would be. We would still maintain, I think we've talked about maybe making, we're trying to get more of an urban look, is what we're really trying to do, trying to get that R1U look. And so there's also the potential of doing some rear load. Let's see, that's a front load, I think, and then I think there was actually some rear load. Did he put all that in here? There we go. Here's a lot load.
Just imagine, that image of homes, what, about 10 feet apart?
Right. I mean, right now, these do have the 5 foot, and again, it's, I think it's still pretty early. There, the potential is to do some rear load. We're actually working on a project that would be a planned development that would potentially do something similar to this. So if this were to pass, then maybe we wouldn't have to go through the planned development process. It would be more of a by right. So again, it's very similar to R1U, but I think there might have been a little bit of pushback from, I don't know, one of the cities maybe, about changing the R1U language to make this fit. So that's why we're just asking permission to sit down with the staff so that they could at least look into it.
I can clarify that R1U point. The U districts are tied to the urban Seward maps, which are in the appendices, and so they're geographically constrained. Yeah, we could tinker with those maps, but then that would have ramifications to the R2U, the R3U, the MRU, the other U districts. And so I think it would be cleaner to just create a new zone that could go anywhere. It's not restricted to any map. And, because I think that was the intent, is to be able to do this sort of thing just about anywhere.
Anywhere where there's sewer and water.
Right.
I mean, we wouldn't go, it would have to
And
have sewer and
Bagel,
water.
you guys do infill,
Right.
but you mostly are out in the county,
Right.
in
I would
greenfield sites. So
There's-
that's why I didn't want to tinker with the U districts, just create a new zone, like we did with R1T, the townhouse zone. Yeah.
Well, so would there really be a difference between R1U, with the exception of geographically, R1U and R1C? Are they going to be pretty much the same? You're just going to copy it and say, but now we can
I think at this stage, we'll see, this kind of still needs to be fully vetted.
It's going to be really close.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that, and I'm not sure, Tim, if I mentioned this to you, but I know I did to folks at Bagel. We're as far as the county is concerned, we're very open to these conversations. However, we are moving forward with a policy that if a development utilizes alleys for rear load, we won't accept, the county is not going to accept the alleys because we don't want to maintain.
I think I've actually had some conversations with Stu a little bit about that.
Okay.
I said, I think that's fine. There's no reason why an HOA can't take over that.
Yeah, they could be
maintenance
private
of those.
alleys like Benjamin Crossing.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
It would just be,
So-
access easements
Yeah.
over them.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're on record up front.
Right,
that
I
we're
would
not
agree. I would
accepting
agree.
the
And
alleys.
there's actually even some narrower roads that could be actually in place that are, still we technically consider it an alley, but it could be a little wider than what you would typically see.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just something that the developer committee would like to see looked into, and we got I know a couple projects that could bring in some more with the housing demand that we have.
I'm just wondering, how's this compared to like the Heron Bay product? And maybe those were PDs?
I would say, so.
I tried to look at
I
their
think
lot
Brittany
size.
Chase has some 40-foot wide, or at least the early phases of that had some 40-foot wide lots. Those were single-car garage type lots. But Heron Bay, I think you're right, was probably close to that.
That's been a very successful project.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and honestly, Benjamin Crossing's a good standard to go by as well, in terms of something that's in the ground that's kind of close to what they're getting at. So, yeah. Anyway, staff's ready to, help out.
Very good. So do you need something from us? I think it's a good idea.
I don't know what the process is.
Just give us marching orders.
Talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's about all you need, just.
I just think that.
We'll prepare a
Bagel would like to
draft
be involved.
ordinance for your scrutiny.
Yeah, Bagel would like to be involved in the conversation.
Consent of the committee.
Consent, yeah. I think the consent of the committee is that the staff will work with you on this.
Yep.
And if I don't hear a dissent,
Yeah.
it's so ordered. That's what Steve always says. It's so ordered.
Acknowledged.
Yeah, no, really. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Any other citizens' comments or grievances? Any other comments? Hearing none, I think we're ready for that last motion.
I move to adjourn.
Great job.
Thank you.
There you go.
Did it.
You guys are great.
Nailed it. We don't
Except for
even-
being late, you were great, Jack.
We don't even have
Plenty good.
templates.
Plenty good.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
How come there's so many gas stations? I mean, really?